The purpose of cellular respiration is to break down glucose and make ATP. In order to do this, we need to breathe in oxygen because glucose can be broken down completely only in the presence of oxygen. And the byproducts are carbon dioxide and water. Water can be used by the body, but carbon dioxide is toxic and needs to be breathed out. The most important product of cellular respiration is ATP. Remembering all the steps of cellular respiration can be difficult. I use the analogy of riding the A train downtown. So I'm going to start at 125th Street and ride the A train down all the way to Union Square. So let's look at all the stations. So this is 125th Street, very important station. 59th Street, Columbus Circle. Many lines meet here on 59th Street. So that's an important station. The next one is 42nd Street, Times Square. Everything comes to Times Square, including lots of buses that leave from here. 34th Street, Penn Station is the next station. Lots of trains arrive here, apart from the MTA. 14th Street, Union Square is our last stop in our A train. So I'm going to imagine that the first stop, 125th, is glucose. The next stop, big stop that we take, will be pyruvic acid. From pyruvic acid, the next stop is acetyl-CoA, which goes with 42nd Street, Times Square. Most important molecule, and it's paired with the most important station here. The next one is citric acid cycle, which is paired with 34th Street, Penn Station. And the last one is called oxidative phosphorylation, that goes with Union Square. Cellular respiration begins with the breakdown of glucose to form pyruvic acid. Glucose is a 6-carbon molecule. So what you see here are the 6 carbons. A 3-carbon molecule, which is pyruvic acid. In actuality, are made, so let's draw 2 of these. So this is... Now in this process, these are made, which is not a whole lot of ATP, and because this happens in the absence of oxygen, you only get 2 ATP. You also make a molecule called NADH. NADH picks up extra hydrogens from the glucose. Because glucose is C6H12O6, the hydrogens come from the glucose breakdown. This process, overall process, is called glycolysis, and it takes place in the cytosol. So the location is the cytosol. This entire process happens in the absence of oxygen, and so we say that this is anaerobic. In the absence of oxygen, the pyruvic acid can sometimes become lactic acid, which makes our muscles sore. This is what happens when we run up a flight of stairs and we feel that our muscles become sore. That is just glycolysis happening, giving us a small amount of ATP and the pyruvic acid turning into lactic acid. The next step is to convert pyruvic acid to acetyl-CoA. We're going from a 3-carbon molecule to a 2-carbon molecule. As a result, we lose 1 carbon dioxide. Acetyl-CoA, as we remember, is the most important molecule in this entire process. Acetyl-CoA must now enter the mitochondria from the cytosol. Once it enters the mitochondria, it is in the mitochondrial matrix where it enters the citric acid cycle. The citric acid cycle is made up of a number of molecules that are altered along the way with the help of very important enzymes. The result of the citric acid cycle is that carbon dioxide is released, ATP is made, NADH is made, and FADH2 is made. NADH and FADH2 are important electron acceptors, and they are important in the next stage of the cellular respiration. This whole process takes place in the mitochondria. The last stage is called oxidative phosphorylation. This begins with NADH and FADH2 bringing in hydrogen in the form of an electron and proton. The electron is brought to the inner mitochondrial membrane, and there are some electron acceptors, which are proteins arranged along the membrane. And this picks up the electron and bounces it to the next one below. So here's the electron being bounced, and every time it bounces, it releases some energy. And final acceptor is oxygen, which makes water. The energy that comes out of the bouncing electrons is used to pump hydrogen ions against the concentration gradient. So hydrogen is pushed up its gradient. The hydrogen accumulates outside and then moves down its gradient in a great rush. And here is a channel that brings it in, and this movement of hydrogen down the gradient is used to convert ADP to ATP. In this way, majority of the ATP in cellular respiration is made. About 36 ATP is made from a single glucose molecule, and the entire process takes place in the mitochondria. Another reason for studying the cellular respiration is to understand how fats and proteins are metabolized. So let's go back to our original analogy of writing down all the different stops in cellular respiration. So we have glucose, pyruvic acid, acetyl-CoA entering the citric acid cycle, followed by oxidative phosphorylation. So how do the fats and proteins enter this pathway? So let's begin with the fats. The fats are broken into glycerol and fatty acids. The fatty acids enter and are converted to acetyl-CoA, and they carry on and make lots and lots of ATP, even more than a single glucose molecule. Glycerol, on the other hand, enters the cycle right in the middle of glycolysis and goes towards the formation of glucose. Proteins are broken down into amino acids. The amino acids must first lose their amino group before they can enter the pathway. So these deaminated amino acids enter the citric acid cycle. They can be converted to acetyl-CoA. They can enter the glycolysis pathway as well. When they enter the glycolysis pathway, they can go towards the formation of glucose. They can move left and become glucose. This ability of fats and proteins to become glucose is called gluconeogenesis. How does the body get fuel when you are fasting? So let's look at the metabolism of starvation. Within 4 hours of having eaten a meal, the liver breaks down glycogen to provide glucose. Glucose is the main fuel for majority of our organs, except the heart, which uses fatty acids. From 4 to 16 hours of having eaten a meal, glycogenolysis still continues. However, gluconeogenesis provides glucose from non-carbohydrate sources such as proteins and fats. This is because the body is running out of glycogen and glucose must come from other sources. Glucose is still used as the primary fuel until after 24 hours. Between 16 and 30 hours, no more glycogenolysis can continue because glycogen is run out. gluconeogenesis still provides some glucose. Most of the body switches its fuel from glucose to fatty acids because there's not much glucose available, except for the brain. The brain insists on glucose, the premier fuel. From 2 to 24 days, gluconeogenesis still continues by the breakdown of fats and proteins to provide glucose to the brain. However, towards the end, ketogenesis takes over because when fatty acids are broken down, ketones are generated, and ketones can be used as fuel by the brain, and the brain still uses a small amount of glucose. So there is a general shift in fuel from glucose for almost all major organs to fatty acids for almost all major organs, and for the brain from glucose to ketones.